sphere. Yes, we're gathering today here on, what day is it? Saturday, October 10th. It is quarter after 12. I'm so happy that we have everybody here. Whoop whoop, can I get a round of applause for the final day of PXR 2020? Yeah, I love me those hand emojis. Perfect. All right. Welcome to our product ownership workshop. First, I'd like to say that PXR 2020 is brought to you by Single Thread Theater Company and Electric Company Theater, in thanks to our community partners, Toaster Lab and Langara Center for the Entertainment Arts, and with the funding support of the Canada Council for the Arts' Digital Strategies Fund. I would like to acknowledge that I am speaking to you today live from the stolen territories of the Coast Salish people here in Vancouver, BC. They are the homes to the Musqueam, the Squamish, and the Tsleil-Waututh, and I would like to acknowledge, especially on a day such as the Thanksgiving weekend, that I am very privileged to be where I am with the technology that I have to be gathered with you all here. Bring it around to the moment that we're in. Now, for those of you who attended the workshop last weekend, you learned how to utilize the cohort programming on your mobile devices to create interactive works. We will now hear from that exact same team on how to organize and develop your own practices when mixing technologies and mediums. So Jacob, take it away. Thanks so much.
All right. The first thing I'm going to ask everybody to do is to meet us over on the green circle. Join us on the green circle. Can you step onto it? Are you able to step onto the circle? Or is that being awkward? Okay. All right. One of my goals for today is, because we're here in VR together, to as part of this session, just experiment a bit with social conversational dynamics in VR. A first question is, can everybody hear me? Awesome. I love one of my favorite things from sessions so far in VR has been the degree of interruptibility. Because I am a person who tends to like overtalk, and so it's very, very useful if people are able to interrupt me.
I agree.
And so I just wanted to make sure. Who was that? Great. Yes, the right track. But for this to be a thing, we have to be close enough that we can all hear each other without using the amplify, raise your hand to speak model. So I'm going to try that. But if at any point you find that you can't hear me, please let me know and we can switch over to, loudspeaker amplifying mode, which it feels like should just come on automatically if I do this with my hands, but there's a feature for later. The first thing I wanted to do is a little physical grounding in the space. So I would like us all to come onto the circle. You might be close with other people. We'll see how that feels. I know it's weird during COVID times. Come onto the circle and face the monolith. And we're just going to do a little salutation to the monolith that Beth and her team and her participants put together for us. So we're going to start facing the monolith. Take a look around, make sure you've got enough space in your real physical space. Arms together. Lean a bit to the right. Lean a bit to the left. Now, as your arms come down, just gently let your head tilt forward. And at some point, this will cause your body to spin around weirdly. Okay, just give it a moment to let your neck relax, because you've been using it really hard holding up this VR headset. Drop your controllers, shake out your fingers a little bit, shake out your hands a little bit. I'm just going to turn around so I can see what this looks like, because I was curious. Great. If you're in 2D, then you can absolutely do all of this. We just won't see you do it. Okay. Bring it back up. Overhead. All right. Take a breath in and a breath out. The next thing we're going to do is repeat that, but we're going to finish up lying on the ground, because that's pretty much how 2020 is feeling so far. That's my postural response to 2020. So we'll bring our arms up and we'll roll down our spine and come to a position where you can see the large black rectangle over our heads. All right. Can I ask Aiden or Alex to hit the go on that? Aiden or Alex?
1 second.
Okay.
Keep talking, Jacob. Sorry, I might have to.
All right, I'm being instructed to keep talking. So one thing I was really curious about, from a product ownership point of view, a lot of things don't get done, and so often my first response when I'm in a new technical environment or using a new piece of software is to hunt for the edges. What didn't get done? What did not get implemented? And it's a bit of a way to sort of understand something by seeing where it starts to break, which is a principle that I use a lot. I'm probably going to suggest that we come back to the video if it's going to take a lot longer.
Oh, give me 30 seconds. 30 seconds.
All right. Let's finish off our physical warm-up with a little hand and wrist work. So the first thing we'll try is just figure eights. This is still holding your controllers. Great. And let's try some offering hands. So that's going to sweep in from the side, come up to the center. Sweep in from the side, come up to the center. Great. Okay, it looks like we might be getting a second video. All good.
Are you able to move that, Jacob?
Which one?
The new one that I just thrown up there.
As a turtle.
Here, I got it. I got it.
Okay. Hey, all right. So find somewhere where you can see this.
I'm Jacob Nitwiecki, and I'm a creative technologist. I grew up backstage. My first career was as a ballet dancer and choreographer. I've been coding since I was 7, and over the last couple years, I created apps in collaboration with some really interesting theater and dance artists. Cohort is a way to take the capabilities we've created together and make them available to more creators. The Cohort development team is made up of myself, Luke Garwood, Amanda Baker, and Nabil Kassam. So what can you do with Cohort? You can load sound, video, and images into a custom app. You can borrow devices from us and load that app onto them for your show. Or you can use your own devices. Or you can submit it to the App Store and have your audience download it. You can trigger playback of sound and video on cue, either from our admin website on a laptop or phone, or directly from QLab. You can also cue text to appear and trigger device vibrations. What can you do with this? Well, we can have a quick look at what some of our partner companies have done. It's Not a Box Theater used Cohort to create a documentary theater piece called Over Here, where storytellers share their stories in their neighborhoods with audiences. Bluemouth Inc. used Cohort to enhance their theater piece Cafe Sarajevo, using 3D 360 video to immerse audiences in locations throughout the Balkans. Peggy Baker Dance Projects used Cohort to guide participants of all abilities and let them feel what it's like to invent and enjoy movement together. There's also a few capabilities that have been used by our partner companies but aren't quite ready for public release yet. Adelheid Dance Projects used push notifications and text cues to guide audiences around a huge indoor-outdoor site in their work Lot X to create an augmented reality public installation and to offer closed captioning for deaf and hard of hearing audience members. And I used Cohort in my work, Jackeries, to cue augmented reality scenes that overlay projection-style graphics and video onto a live performer. Cohort is open source and free for anyone to use. In addition to production uses in theaters and in site-specific works, it's really helpful for quickly testing out ideas and making prototypes. If you're interested in learning more, you can check out cohort.rocks or email us at cohortrocks@gmail.com. Thanks to our partner companies, to the Canada Council for the Arts Digital Strategy Fund, and to Heidi Strauss and Rachel
All
Henry
right.
Adelheid for
Now,
making this all
if you're on the
possible.
ground, just take a good 10 count to get up and work through that in a very deliberate way because your space is a bit strange right now. So we're going to slowly move back to our feet. Make sure we're not going to smash into anything in our space. And we're going to reconvene on the green circle. It seems like we have a few more people joining us now, so I will repeat what I said earlier, which is just I'm testing this out without amplification, so that we can see if it's possible to like keep a conversational flow going. If at any point, so that means we have to stay pretty close. If at any point you can't hear me, just say so. Let me know, and we'll switch to amplifying and raising hands. All right. The other thing I just want to mention is that if you see me do weird movement like this, it is me checking my notes, which I will do occasionally as we go. So welcome. Thank you so much for joining us. And if you see me doing this, it's the same reason. Okay, we're going to kick this off. That video provided a bit of context and background on Cohort and what we do and what we're up to. Personally, I'm Jacob, in case you missed that. My colleague Amanda Baker is here from Cohort right over there. Hey, look, I can point. Today we're going to be talking about product ownership. My practice as an artist is grounded in movement, media, and code. I grew up as a ballet dancer, started programming as a kid, started making movies as a teenager, and so that's kind of the territory that I play in. With Cohort, I'm in more of a technical facilitator role. Sometimes I get called a technological dramaturg, and I really enjoy helping other artists figure out how to accomplish things that they want to do technically. So before we talk about how Cohort has conceived of and organized our product ownership roles, it's probably a good idea just to talk about what sort of a traditional model of product ownership looks like in the tech industry. And really, sorry, notes again. Wow, this is very awkward. Okay. An experience I had as a live stream director, which I spent a couple years doing, mostly with dance on screen, I started to conceive of my role as a director as being the final person who was responsible to the audience for for the experience we're offering them. And that, I think, is the best way I can explain or analogize the traditional idea of product ownership in tech. It's the person who really should always have the user first in their head. There's a lot of balancing different priorities, of course, but I think that that's a reasonable working definition of a product owner, is the person who bears final responsibility for the experience that's being offered. In tech land, that sort of role evolved out of the gradual failure of project owners. And the breakdown there is that product owners have a sense of continuity. They have a sense of, hey, our users are with us for 5 years, for 10 years. We need to make sure that we are still maintaining a consistent story for them. And so project-based work tends to fall apart as organizations grow and get bigger. It gets a lot harder unless you're doing the exact same type of projects repeatedly, which would be sort of the case in a large national theater company. It's organized on a project basis, but the projects themselves fall into very consistent slots and very consistent formats. And so you can really apply like organizational templates. What does each show need? Okay, great, we can reuse that paperwork and those functions across all the shows. but as companies grow and as teams grow, and as we know from people in this group who make adventurous work, our work doesn't really fall into consistent templates. Okay, I'm gonna try. Thanks, Aiden. I just got a note that my audio was getting a bit glitchy, so I'm gonna try turning on amplification. And if that doesn't work, hello, probably I'm now much too loud. Please keep telling me if my audio gets glitchy again, Aiden, and I will move closer to my Wi-Fi router. Yeah, so our work tends to not fall into easy templates or easy repeatable patterns. And so product ownership emerges in those environments as a way to establish lines of responsibility and also as a way to coordinate the activities of multiple teams. A product owner in tech will tend to have a team or teams that they are essentially responsible for, and will work really closely with the customer or the user or the client. Basically, however that word gets changed a lot as we move between disciplines: audience, player, participant, attendee. So that's kind of a. Oh, and then the last thing I'll mention, which many of you are probably familiar with, is that the standard model of technical development is and software development is iterative development. And so the idea is that you are periodically taking a chance, taking a moment and an opportunity to continue evolving your processes as you are doing with. Okay, I'm getting a message from Aiden that I am really breaking up, and so I'm just going to go off headset for about 30 seconds, move closer to my router, and be right back. I apologize sincerely for this. What I might actually do, if everyone can still hear me for a second, is set up our first me not talking exclusively activity. So I would love for you to, Amanda, I'm going to ask you to time keep for this. We're going to do an exercise called 1, 2, 4, all. We're going to take a minute, and I'd like you to think for yourself about an experience you had. Pardon me, checking those notes again. I'd like you to think about an experience you had, good or bad, where you worked with someone with technical skills or language or experience that you didn't have. Is that question clear? Is that prompt clear for everyone? Okay, great. So I'd like you to take a minute on your own to think about a specific occasion, again, good or bad. Hopefully I'll be back by then, but if I'm not, what I'd love for you to do is grab a partner and share those experiences. And we'll take a minute or two, Amanda, let's take 2 minutes for that. After that, Amanda will let you know the time. And please gather in groups of 4 around one of these cylindrical cocktail tables and have a short discussion amongst that group of 4 about those experiences. I'm going to be right back in a moment. Is the ask clear? All right, let's give it a shot. Be right back.
Hi, my name's Milton. David?
Can you hear me?
How are you?
Hi.
It's good.
Hi.
What was the question?
No, just a second.
I was muted.
Let's see.
Um,
You
Do again,
worked
it
with
was
somebody
four
who
or
has
two?
technical
Kind of thought it
knowledge
was
that
about,
you did not have.
my partner teaching me how to
Good or
play
bad
over here.
experiences?
Yeah.
It's a head scratcher.
Yeah, I mean that's actually a good example. If you actually, you know what that makes me think of is my dad
Oh, hey, I'm
teaching me
muted.
to drive. To
Hey.
be honest,
How's it going?
and I was actually starting to think that any show I've worked on, I work with people whose skills I don't understand, but not necessarily like the technical ones. But yeah, I guess by technical you mean like
This is
playing with
amazing so far.
machines or technology, I suppose. Not just.
Yeah.
Because I find a lot of what
Like,
actors and directors do kind of mysterious.
Like this. You probably have more than me.
Oh, for sure.
You know, you
I
work
mean,
a lot more with technology.
Had more
anytime
you
I've talked
when you
about
worked with them, was it good, bad,
fantasy
anything
systems where like technology is being introduced, he'll actually joke about how spoons are.
I'm trying to figure out what
Like how far back are we going?
was
Yeah,
possible.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
like
Also
spoons
in
are
the,
technology. Are we not advanced enough for spoons? Like,
Yeah,
the
yeah.
needs of the person I was working with was also
Actually makes me think of
Yeah.
the Matrix. You know that scene where they go to the Oracle and they bend the spoon, and then he says, "Oh, it's not the spoon that's bending; it's the universe around me."
or how to phrase
I was
it.
just talking about the
Yeah.
Matrix to my daughter, which my wife. I think I thought of that, but anyways, yeah,
Very
yeah.
Yeah,
Spoon
well,
is
I
definitely a
wanted to
technology.
technology and computer
go back
science
in
and all
and,
that stuff.
and check it out.
So I feel like my daily life
Actually, really want to watch Exorcist.
is just a constant reminder that I don't know what I'm doing technically.
Oh, what's
You're always the person who doesn't know.
Yes,
what's that
yes.
called again? Sorry?
I try my best. I really do, but I just kind of throw it his way.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
What was
Hey,
that?
I just thought I couldn't say
What
hi.
about you, David?
Looks like somebody ended up without a partner,
David
but it looks like also you might be an actor.
Or-
Okay.
Oh,
Yeah, okay.
Obviously was also
my partner.
Yeah, I mean, we work with
E.
an app developer for a
I
show
think
we
we're
did.
at time to send people for tables. I did not have amplification power, and I don't know how to get that.
Great.
No,
Hello, friends. You're now at time. Please make your way towards your cocktail tables to discover more about each other. Thanks so much.
Oh, okay.
I guess we're supposed to like go to one of these.
what color do you want to pick?
Oh, okay.
You know, red.
I think
So
so.
we can move this conversation
Go
that
to-
way.
Blue.
Yeah. Jude,
Yeah?
Jude Law. Jude Law's the actor.
Yeah.
Jude Law. Oh, okay, cool.
Yeah, yeah.
I think David Cronenberg's the director writer, isn't he? Isn't that?
Oh, I'm not sure.
think?
It was
Yeah, I don't know.
it was a
Check.
real leap for me to remember a name for the actor.
Which film was that?
Existence.
Oh.
Sorry, just
It's a
seen it.
horror
Jake,
thriller
can you hear me?
VR movie.
Jake?
Oh.
About the launch
Like a
of
weird
a
Can you
echo.
VR system.
I can hear you.
Okay, good.
And
Jake,
Are you
can you
good?
hear
it's
me?
really good. It's really ridiculous. And I
Okay,
love
good.
it.
Yeah. Before,
Been
the
years since I
small
watched
is
Vancouver.
being very aggravating.
he's made
It's
a work based
reloading
off
me
of
into
that,
the space.
Alex
So even though I'm unmuted, the sound starts to
where it
cut
was
out
like a
before
kind
the
of
disconnect.
participatory
So,
experience
sorry.
where people would give
Yeah, no
him
problem.
their contact information,
Love
and he
having
went
that in.
on like a month-long kind of journey with them, and they weren't sure when the ends and when it began. But it's all it's a lot better.
Nice.
Yeah, I think I'm more like Marissa. Like I don't really know much, and just figuring out how to get to this conference was plenty of things to do for me in terms of technology. I think, but I feel like at my organization right now we are going to be working with cohorts to experiment on
We were talking about
augmented reality and ASL interpretation.
and driving.
And so,
Cool.
thankfully, there are experts who are
Showing us how
who
it was
are
done
like very
in a
good at
positive
this, and we're
way.
just sort of
They ended up being really condescending about helping us. And we're kind of like, well, I'll do it for you. You don't really need to know how to do it in the future. So that was not a great experience. And that's something that I've had in the past experience with as well. Sometimes people just kind of they don't share it in an open way.
That sucks. That sucks.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Have you gone through the?
I was sharing. I had a positive experience where I was filming a big musical number once for my web series. I'd never done anything that big or ambitious before. I had the biggest crew I'd ever worked with. I was directing, and but my cinematographer, like he has way more experience on set than I do, and so like I was just so great to have him there because he kind of had that sage advice to be like oh, here's a thing that's going to be a problem, think about this, think about that, and like it was just he never stepped on my toes, which he was very respectful of that, which very different from your experience, I'm afraid. But yeah, and so like it was turned into being one of the best on-set
Hello,
experiences I ever had.
friends. It is time now to return to the big
Ooh, that
green
was quick.
circle.
I'm gonna get
Thank
to
you
your
all for
story.
chatting. Please return to the big green circle.
Okay. Yeah. All right, guys.
Carry along.
To the green circle.
Too far.
I don't want to
Brett,
talk
too
about it,
far.
okay? I don't want to talk about it.
Shit, I'll get around this way.
told you I'm not technically inclined.
It's like watching you die into the gray ether. I don't know which way to look. Oh, there he is.
All right.
There.
So I'd love to ask a couple of people to share something interesting that you heard someone else say in your group, and you can summarize or sort of be. It can be as small as you want. If I could have a volunteer first. Nobody heard anything interesting in the last 4 minutes of conversation.
Well, I'll go.
Okay, great. Whoever said that, go. Speak loud.
Okay, sure.
And
So I was hearing Jenny's story, and her story, she shared, it was a major pet peeve of mine, and that happened to her, very unfortunately, where she was in a project where she was wanting to learn a new skill set for the 3D modeling she was doing. But unfortunately, the person they went to for advice basically just kind of did it for them and didn't really like educate them. They were just like, here, in a condescending way. And I hate seeing that. And so I'm very sorry Jenny had that experience. That's what I got. Pet peeve of mine.
That's actually fabulous. I would love to take a minute and dive into that just a bit. Everyone can still hear me okay? Cool. So I was talking with Archana Rajan, who's also on our team at Cohort, and she works in quality assurance. So it's her job when I write code to figure out, or to try and break it, basically. And we have a lot of fun in that role. Amanda and I have a similar working relationship. And she described this mentality sometimes from developers as essentially like a chuck it over the wall mentality, which is a bit like, hey, I have my area of responsibility. It's very firmly defined, and I'm going to do my bit and then throw it over to the next person and not really, like, that's it. That's good for me. I'm good. And I've had this experience. I don't tend to have this experience as a developer, but I've certainly had this experience with developers or with other developers. And one of the things that Arch and I have talked about were how do we get from these behaviors to talk about values that can help us, like not just tell a collaborator or a developer that what they're doing isn't working, but how do we have conversations so we can try and be on the same ground and understand each other's values? And one of the values that felt like a really useful thing to talk about in this case was stewardship. And by that I mean, it's the opposite of I'm going to build my thing and throw it over the wall to the next person whose job it is to work on it. Stewardship means that all of us on a project have the responsibility that that project needs to be able to keep going. Even if in theater we talk about the bus factor, but building the capacity of a team to do meaningful work on a project is all of our jobs. And so a potential way that might be useful to talk to developers is to say, do you really want this to just stop? Do you really want this to be something that only you can work on? That felt like an interesting value to talk about. So a couple of specific tactics around that value and that sort of type of conflict might be questions like, when you're talking to developers, whether they're already on your team or you're already in collaboration with them, or whether you're hiring, think about looking for people who are excited to find a shared language. And in theater, that's what we do. In theater, dance, create indie games. I'm pointing at, but in these small creative project teams, that's a big part of it. And so we need to choose the people we work with and help the people we work with build skills around finding shared language. Another thing is that as a developer, I conceive of my job to include education, and that's mutual, to include learning. I do have a bit of a compulsive love of learning from everyone around me and also educating everyone around me. And it's taken a long time to understand the socialization of that, in the sense that the intent can be very different from the impact. And I've worked with a lot of developers who, came into the industry with that same mindset of like, I'm going to share all the knowledge I can, all the time I can, and then start to understand that that means that has implications in terms of how much space they take up in a group, in terms of how much space they take up in a conversation or a room. And it's really hard for all of us, to find that balance. So opening up those conversations can be, I think, really useful. The last thing I would encourage, as far as when you're looking for developers, or if you're thinking about people you're already working with and how to help them become a better collaborator, is that, oh, and my phone just locked itself. Great, there's the note. Right. My job as a developer includes being excited to learn things that are outside of my discipline. And that feels really fundamental. So I think it's really awkward to work with a technologist or a technical specialist who doesn't have that trait on a creative project team. I've just never seen that really work very well. And if you talk to Toaster Labs' Andrew Simpere, I think he and I had some conversations about that and came to the same kind of conclusion. So that's the chuck it over the wall pathology. That I think.
Jacob?
Yes.
Just to say also that that's incredibly common in theater, right? For any of us
Yeah.
who have worked anywhere remotely close to industrial mainstream theater, the set does, first the playwright, or probably first the commissioner, then that we work, the mainstream of theater works in an incredibly waterfall, hierarchical, chuck it over the wall framework. And so it's not only when we're dealing with the technologists, but also when we're dealing with the artistic directors and technical directors and production managers and Harborfront Center staff, right? Like, we have to deal with those shitheads, or we don't, right? Or we use other spaces. But like that exists in our field also deeply.
Yes, and I have actually run into it as much there. What is interesting to me is always that line where when you're building something, like I feel like the people who are in this environment here are probably people who bias towards making different things rather than making versions of things that exist or working in formats that are really well understood and well explored and well articulated. And so I think that's always going to be to some extent the case when you're working in new formats and when you're working with organizations that are designed around old formats. I think personally the good experiences I've had have mostly come down to having an internal patron at the organization. And so those are some of those experiences would be with TIFF, with Harborfront, with the National Ballet. If you have an internal patron or champion of the project that you're trying to bring, sorry, just getting little messages. That's really useful. And a warning sign is if you get assigned an internal patron who does not have any power, authority, or responsibility within the organization, they are not going to be able to help you. And so that would be the caveat that I would add to that. I would love to throw it back open and see what other interesting things did you hear other people talk about during your conversations?
We were joking about how we think technology, as it's known, is limited, and that everything has its own technology. So, joking about spoons and the Matrix, that spoons are a form of technology.
Absolutely. I think my favorite expression of that is technology is what we call things that don't work properly yet. Paper is a fabulous technology. It's just really well understood, and we know what it can do and what it can't do, and how it works, and how to pass it around. And so I think that's a really good thing to keep in mind. Other interesting things from from your conversations earlier? Go for it.
It's not really something that I heard, more kind of like a question actually to you, if that's okay.
Yeah.
It seems to me that big sort of part of the conflict which might arise in the example that was brought up before, but also in the context of what you're talking about, is the difference between the process of doing something versus actually just realization of a product. So in traditional, well-defined sort of theater, it's often a product-oriented thing because there's a clear script, there is clear delineated tasks or roles to greater or lesser extents for individuals to do. But it sounds to me like what you're talking about and the way that you're approaching your conversation about development is more like devising in theater, where it's actually the process and outcome are sort of part of the same thing, and it's not. And even when you get to outcomes, it's more like this is how far we got. This is it's
Yeah.
endless versions of betas, some better betas than others. Is
software is never done. You just stop at a certain point.
Right.
That's a really good observation and a question. I think that there's an extent to which, because software is a technology in that we don't know all about it yet and it doesn't really work perfectly yet, when we're making software, even if it's in service of something, even if I'm building a way for a show to like broadcast push notifications during a show, when we're making software, we're generally making something that hasn't been made before. And so, to an extent, every software project has that difficulty of process and product become merged. So one thing I wanted to talk a little bit about is the idea of scope, because that's sort of how in technology land these discussions get focused, and how we can decide how to spend the time that we have. So can I just ask, can somebody give me an attempt at a working definition of scope as you would understand it in your own practice? Don't worry, I just want to get someone other than me throwing an idea in there. If I say the project scope, tell me what that means. I'm gonna volunteer somebody. All right, Milton. Oh, tell me what scope, what you think of when I say scope.
Voluntold. Okay. So scope, as in what are the furthest reaches of what is intended for the project?
Love it. The furthest reaches of what is intended for the project. Now, I would love to just point out this is so important in software. If you take a look around, how far do you think the gray floor that we are standing on goes on?
I don't know.
Effectively, probably mathematically forever-ish.
How do you measure stuff in VR?
Scope becomes really, really important because when you're working with software, a lot of things are unbounded by default. And so being able as a team to talk about what we are and are not going to do becomes really important. A couple ways that these are a couple sort of bullet points that I found really useful to keep in mind when discussing scope. The first thing is when you're talking to a technologist or to a programmer, somebody with skills that you don't have, and who you are relying on, a really, really important thing is that you not explain the solution that you want. A really, really important thing is that you explain the problem. Because that is your first opportunity to get this person, this technologist or this developer, actually excited mentally, intellectually, emotionally about solving this. And that's the energy that I think helps a lot. So one thing is always talk about the problem and not the solution first. Solutions are things that you come up with together and attack together. And so I think that's a first really valuable thing you can do. Does that prompt any questions? Just checking in. It's great. I'm really enjoying being able to actually see everyone. another thing, and this is has kind of become a common or a slightly more common thing in the culture, is the idea of what is what is the minimum what is the smallest thing you can do? What is the smallest piece of your concept or your idea that you can break off and tackle first? And that's sometimes talked about in terms of minimum viable product, or MVP. Thank you, Aiden. And the idea with an MVP is that you have to start somewhere. And if you are working iteratively, your first few, whether it's your first few weeks of development or your first few days in rehearsal, let's say I'm going into a devised theater process, which I've spent over the last year, over the last 2 or 3 years, I think I've been in 4 substantial devised theater processes as a technologist. That idea is partly about lowering expectations. If you're in a devised process, do you really expect to get a lot of finished work done in the first 2-3 days? Somebody spends time in those processes, David? No, I'm seeing him shake. Yeah. So that first time together is better focused on learning about each other, on talking about scope and talking about values and talking about developing shared language, learning from each other about how we work together. And so breaking off a very small slice of actual functionality. So if it were this world, the minimum viable product is basically a floor, so that we don't fall through into the infinite depths. That's enough for us to do everything we've done today, except for having nice little coffee tables to convene around. So that's a really useful tactic when you're approaching a technological project. There's 2 more things I'd like to mention when we talk about scope. Thinking in stories. If I say the word user story, put up your hand if that's a word you have heard, a term you have heard. All right. Okay. David in the blue sweatshirt. Can you tell me the context that you heard user story, or that you've encountered it?
Sorry, I was muted.
Okay, no worries.
I've heard it in generally in terms of like a narrative framework for like game mechanics.
Awesome. Okay, yes. So just in case anybody didn't quite hear that, in the context of a narrative framework around game mechanics. And so for me, a user story is a way to start getting really granular without getting really technical. And the Mad Lib structure that I tend to use is, as a blank, I want to blank so that I can blank. And so what we get in there is a subject, so like the person, the role, the person, the type of user who wants to be able to do something. We get what they want to be able to do, and we get what that enables or why that's important to them. That captures a ton of information in one sentence, and we can compose larger arcs for a user by arranging those stories. I would love to do a simple example of this. Based on your experience in AltSpace VR during this conference, what is something you would like to be able to do that you have found yourself unable to do?
Well, everybody wants to fly.
Hey, okay, I want to be able to fly. Who is saying this?
It's Chris.
Sorry, Chris. How would you describe your role in AltSpace VR?
A new user.
A new user, great.
A newbie.
So as a new user, I want to be able to fly so that, or because. I think, can you give me the because or the why on that?
I don't know, because it's human nature. It's exciting.
Great, that's fine. That's good. That's enough. It does not need to be a long thing. Thanks, Aiden. So as a new user in AltSpace VR, I want to be able to fly because it's exciting. That is something that technologists on a team, that UX people on a team, that spatial designers on a team, everybody can actually understand that. It gives them a person to anchor that to, or a type of person to anchor that to, and it gives them a clear sense of the what and the why. I've just been notified by Aiden that that is time, and this is the end of our workshop. And I know that there are other things happening and people have stuff to go to. I'm going to stick around in the world for a little bit if people want to chat and catch up. I do want to say a big thank you for joining us for this. And yeah, if you want to stick around for a bit, that's great. If you have things to get to, no problem. Thank you so much for coming today and joining us.
Thanks, Jacob.
Thanks, Jacob.
very much.
Because yeah, there was
Wonderful.
What do you see, Jacob?
Have you tried any
There
other
was
like
so many people
spaces
and
like
knowing
alt
that
VR
that
yet
will only be part
in
of the story.
Not
in VR?
really.
Oh,
Not really. I
this is great.
haven't.
Let's see,
You?
Sean, ask questions.
They don't.
I've only gone to
they don't
Rec
have
Room, which is a bit more like
Oh, you went.
I find that really interesting.
you can like play games with friends and stuff.
That looks fun.
Yeah, I mean, I'm curious. It's not hugely different than alt space,
I would
other
say
than
Okay.
for sure.
like it has more features for interaction for like games you would play with friends in a regular rec room. But you can still talk. You can still kind of
Yeah.
gesture. You can
Yeah,
chat.
yeah.
So,
Sounds good. I'd like to see. I'd like to check that out because I've got a cousin that I discovered who I think plays with VR. So maybe we can meet up.
10 seconds.
Mm.
Friends, 10 seconds.
yeah,
Yeah.
I enjoyed it. I prefer to alt space.
You prefer Rec Room? Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Well, I'll check it out.
And
Oh,
then
what are those things over there?
The orbs.
Those orbs, yeah.
I think it's just aesthetic,
See
but
what
I
happens.
could be wrong.
Oh. I was trying to interact with them earlier and I couldn't
Yeah,
really
they do look like the world
figure out.
portal.
Yeah, they do. They port.
kind of Western cultural way to see theater, but
Yeah.
it always frustrates me. It's like I need to know every little thing about.
Hey everyone, welcome to day 4. Just going to say a few things before we get started. Thank you for your patience. As you might know, PXR2020 is brought to you by Single Thread Theater Company and the Electric Company Theater. We'd like to thank Toaster Lab and the Lagares Center for the Entertainment Arts. We'd also like to gratefully acknowledge the support of the Canada Council for the Arts Digital Strategy Fund. We'd also like to acknowledge that we've organized this event primarily on the traditional and stolen territories of the Coast Salish peoples in Vancouver, BC. And I'm talking to you today from Kingston, Ontario, the traditional hunting grounds of the Haudenosaunee and the Anishinaabe peoples. Today, how are practitioners approaching the creative process for new content in XR performance? Is there a common language shared with other creative industries in the medium? What is the dramaturgical processes in XR? How do you create and innovate? Justin Garrett, one of the great minds from Team Toaster Lab, is here to lead this conversation further. Let's give her a round of emojis, everybody. Thank you very much.
Oh man, you guys, it's so beautiful. It's like we're underwater, except there's hands. I'm so excited to be here. Thank you guys so much for joining us today. We are super thrilled to have this conversation. We're going to try something slightly more interactive, and just hold tight for a sec, and we'll explain that more in a second. First of all, I'm Justine Garrett. I'm a producer from Toaster Lab and a co-founder. My specialty is in producing and writing for immersive and extended reality experiences. Toaster Lab creates place-based extended reality experiences. So my morning was going to a park in Toronto with my 2 little kids and running around and doing 360 video and hiding from the camera. So complete opposite of this morning is now, but I'm thrilled because it's all part of my own continuum of creative process. I would love to introduce our amazing panel today. We have 5 people. Immediately here is Megan Byrne, who is on our wonderful Toaster Lab Mixed Reality Performance Atelier Advisory Board, but I'll let her introduce herself.
Tansi, Megan Byrne Nasika-san, Apatawako-si-san, Hamilton, Ontario, Nuchin. Hi, I'm Megan Byrne. I'm Apatawako-si-san, or Ontario Métis, and I'm born and raised in Hamilton, Ontario, the traditional lands of the Six Nations. And I am a video game designer, and also I recently, for the last 2 years, I was working as the digital and interactive coordinator for Imaginative, which is the world's largest Indigenous film media, like screen-based media film festival. And so I was the one who masterminded and created the digital space, and we did a lot of work to help create more spaces where Indigenous people can create VR or AR or anything that, but in a way that they want to do it, not necessarily in a way that requires them to perform their indigeneity in a particular way. So that's me.
Thanks so much, Megan. Thank you, Megan. And then this wonderful Mohawk gentleman here is Michael Wheeler, and he's going to introduce himself.
Hi, everyone. I am Michael Wheeler. I'm the Director of Artistic Research at Spiderweb Show Performance and a co-curator of FOLDA, which stands for the Festival of Live Digital Art. And my experience in VR mostly comes from us just trying to figure out how theater makers are using it right now. At FOLDA, we've presented a couple of VR pieces, including Violette, which I think you might have seen here earlier today. And we've done a couple of workshops, including with the Games Institute at the University of Waterloo and how playwrights can get involved. And so, I don't know, I do a lot of work with online live digital work, but I feel like I'm still learning some of the basics about VR, and I'm really happy to be here learning more with you.
Thank you. Conrad Sly, right over here, right here in the hoodie with the purple outfit.
Yes.
Conrad, you want to introduce yourself? Yeah.
Yeah, sure. Yeah. Hi, I'm Conrad. I'm based out of Vancouver, British Columbia. My background is in doing architectural visualizations for virtual reality tours. But I've broken away from doing that, and recently I've been working with Renaissance Opera on doing a version of Orpheus in virtual reality. And we did a lot of like real-time motion capture and stuff like that. So it's been really fun. But thank you for having me.
Amazing. Adnan, would you like to introduce yourself over here? Yay!
Thank you. Thank you. Yes. Hi, I'm Anand Rajaram. I'm in Tagarundo. This is the traditional territory of the Haudenosaunee, the Anishinaabe, the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Huron, and the Wendat. I work primarily, I'm a theater person primarily, but I've been doing a lot of experimentation and creating content in augmented reality. Virtual reality is relatively new, but there is a project I'm currently in residence at the Theatre Center in Toronto, developing a kind of an interactive choose your own adventure kind of game in a platform. We've been using Mozilla Hubs, but we're probably going to migrate to something else. But that's what I'm currently working on. Thanks.
Fantastic.
Thanks for having me.
So good. Jacob Zimmer, right over here, with the
Hey.
beautiful nails and hands.
Oh, thank you. I'm Jacob Zimmer. I'm on the territory of the Kwanlin Dun and the Tonquachin Council in Yukon Territory, which is home of 14 First Nations with 11 self-governing agreements. I'm the artistic director of Nakai Theatre. Up here is my job, and also to say thanks to UConstruct and the Make Space here in town, which is probably one of 4 locations that has the internet capacity to reliably do this work. We are compelled to make theater that can only be made here, which of course is a thing that can translate anywhere, and including into these spaces. I've been a fan of augmented reality since Glasses and the Walkman. And I continue to be mostly interested in augmented reality and mixed reality interactions of human bodies with phones that then can actually see each other also in space. And so we're developing a conceptual piece that, at least at the moment, is a game for a mixed reality with technology that doesn't quite exist yet in the phones.
Thank you so much. And then Alex, okay, great. I have some exciting news. We have so many people here that there's a second shard that Alex is talking from, and also here too. Alex?
Hello. Hi, everyone.
Hi.
Coming to you live from Shard 2. My name's Alex Doe. I'm with Single Thread Theater Company. I'm on the territory of the Coast Salish peoples right now. And yeah, I'm really interested in immersive theater. And I've recently come out here to Vancouver to study game design and VR creation. I just want to say thanks to everyone for coming and doing this crazy thing over the last 2 weekends. It's been so awesome to have you here. And yeah, that's me.
Great. So because we do have, thanks Alex, thanks everybody. So this is our amazing group assembled here. First question that I want to ask everyone is, what has been your biggest failure in the creative process of making extended reality? What was like, whoa, embarrassment? Now you get to share it out loud with everyone here before we break into smaller groups. anyone want to start?
I can start.
Yeah, let's go for it.
Sure.
Yeah, Conrad? Okay.
When I was doing my master's degree at the Center for Digital Media, one of the projects I was put on was working with a water slide company who wanted to explore the potential of doing a virtual reality water slide experience. And
Wow.
but like the challenge that we had to solve was tracking a headset over a great distance. And at the time of doing this, there wasn't really a mobile device, or there was just one mobile device capable of doing this, which was the Lenovo Tango phone. So we obtained
my
one of
God.
these, and we were able to do it. But my God, user testing this thing, I did it hundreds of times, and I think my equilibrium was was shot for a couple weeks after doing that. But like it's just kind of one of those situations where water slides are awesome already, and we were just kind of scratching our heads as to why would you need virtual reality in a water slide. So there's just constantly that question in the back of our minds, and I don't know if it was a failure because we were able to achieve what we did, but I don't think I would. And like the potential for like an eye injury just seems very high. So yeah.
It's amazing. Does anyone else that's pretty spectacular. I really love hearing that.
Yeah, why
Anyone
do we
else
gotta
have
follow
anything? Yeah, I know, right?
Yeah.
I mean,
I don't know
wish
if
mine
it's
was
yeah.
Go ahead, Jacob.
I don't know. It's an extended technology thing, but just all the problems of testing, having tested a one-off performance and having it work perfectly in an empty room that relies heavily on Bluetooth and wireless. And then, of course, it doesn't work with an audience because like it's just one of those like, oh, right, that. That ability to do a dress rehearsal doesn't include having 100 phones using Bluetooth and wireless.
Wonderful.
And actually being in a conference where you can't tell people to take their phones off. Or, Ooh.
Of course,
Whoa.
naturally. So because we have such a great group, I am actually going to encourage everyone to split up next for our next portion. And just to keep it wild and interesting for our panelists, 2 of you are going to go to the other shard. So you're going to follow Liam right here in the green top.
Okay.
Are there 2 volunteers that would like to go away?
Oh,
Jacob?
That seems intense.
Yeah.
Sure, I'll jump.
don't
Jacob
Jacob and Megan? Okay.
I love
But wait. Before you go, stop. Before you go, I have to ask you a question that you're actually going to discuss. So, Jacob, I gotta take my headset off, wake up my computer. Hold on a second. So I
while
can
you're
ask
doing
you a
that,
question.
oh.
Yeah, go for it. What were you going to say, Alex?
I was going to say, panelists, make sure you turn off your megaphones. Otherwise, all we're going to hear is you talking.
Yeah.
That's it.
Don't do that. Okay, so Jacob, my question for you as we break up into smaller groups is what is the commonality for you between other media that you've worked in and the XR creation process? Can you handle it?
Sure.
And differences. Good? Okay. And then Megan, before you go, how do you create? Are you alone? Do you collaborate? What's the process been like right now? Especially in the last 6 months, what's your creative process been like? Physically, and yeah, a lot of crying. I mean, that's why we're here, right? It's just so we're not crying alone anymore. That's like PXR2020. Don't cry alone. So don't cry alone. Okay. So that's what Megan will be chatting with. So bye. We'll see you soon. Have fun in the other shard. Okay, you're gonna follow Liam in the other shard. Okay, great. And then now what's gonna happen is that with the rest of the folks that are here, what I would love to do is have you follow the 3 remaining panelists. Conrad is gonna hang out right here in this area. And Michael Wheeler is going to go on the other side. Here, there's a snowy area. So if you like to chat with Michael Wheeler for the next few minutes, you can go out there. And Adnan, you're going to go out the front door, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes, that's right.
Okay, great. So what I would love it to do, you to do is if you would like to follow Michael Wheeler, please go out this side door and follow him for a chat. Conrad will be right here and Adnan will be right here. And then I have to ask you a question, okay, before you go. This is the big part of it. Hold on. Okay. So Conrad, how 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 do you find like creating a timeline for this work? Do you use a specific process, like timeline process, like related to software, or is it more fluid, or do you have hard stops? Those sorts of things. Like, how do you create a timeline for getting this work done? Seem good? You got it? Yeah, you're good. Okay, so Conrad will be chatting about it here, and then I have a question for Michael Wheeler. Two, what's the dramaturgical process for you in supporting people in working in XR for Spiderweb Show? And then Adnan, where do great ideas come from? What do you think is like a great, worthy idea for creating an XR?
Okay, great.
Good?
Thanks.
Got it. Okay, great. So I'm going to go. You guys can have a few minutes to enjoy, and then we'll call you back after the conversation. So Adnan, again, is going out the front door here. Michael is going to the snowy area, and Conrad will stay right here.
Okay, I'm gonna head out this way.
Thanks.
Race ya!
I'm gonna move very slowly to the snowy area. Hi. This is hilarious. Follow me. Everybody coming still? Great. Cool. I think probably over here might be a good place to chat, and there's also a couple firecrackers over here, which we should probably check out. Well, that's funny. I wonder if people were causing too much mischief with the firecrackers that was here, because you could shoot them at the volunteer desk, and it was kind of fun. Whoa, Beth, what are you up to? How do you know how to fly in this world? I thought you weren't allowed to fly in this world.
I didn't throw the snowball. That
Was it
wasn't
just
me.
hopping?
I'm just gonna jump down.
Anyhow, can everybody hear me? Is it okay? Give me a thumbs up or something? Great. So I think the question posed to us was, what is the dramaturgical process that Spiderweb Show has? And I'm less interested in talking about myself and more maybe just generally about digital dramaturgy, especially I see Beth here. Beth is a digital dramaturg. And so I hear that term around a lot. I guess maybe I'll start off the conversation by saying, dramaturgically, what we've kind of started to understand at Spiderweb Show is that we've copy like a software development model based around alpha, beta, go. And so for those of you not familiar with that, kind of most apps now, when they're being developed, they're in alpha when they're kind of doing internal testing, and then beta when they're tested against an actual kind of set of people. And then when an app is ready to launch, it's go. It's in a go stage. And so the only way that we've adapted that is to, I just want to be able to see everyone. We've changed the word golden to go for us. So I guess apps when they launch are golden, and at a full go when they go. And so the way that we've been curating the festival is that we often program festivals twice. And so you'll see a work in alpha or beta, an unfinished work, and then we'll program it again in the second year as a go, as a finished work. And so what we're asking audiences to do in that capacity is understand themselves as being more complicit in the creative process, and that the feedback that creators get, kind of like actual feedback and just generally how it went for the creators, feeds into the creative process. I think of it differently with digital things. And I should say that those works that we have programmed in 2 years in a row, almost exclusively, those are the ones that have been picked up by other presenters. And so we're feeling that it's a strong model because we're seeing those works that are folded twice, that presenters are then ready to trust them and pay money for them down the road. So that's my opening gambit. Maybe I'll throw to Beth, since we're talking about dramaturgy and your digital dramaturg. Do you have any philosophies on what that means?
Yes.
Can
Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
We can hear you great. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Good. Oh, now everyone's looking at me. I'm gonna stand up. Yeah.
Can anyone else talk in this world?
No one else can talk.
Really?
No.
I can talk.
I think you can talk as long as you're unmuted. Yeah.
Okay, great. Now I can hear you.
Okay. Great. Awesome. Philosophies. Yes, I think a lot of the philosophy comes around a broad spectrum and deep understanding amongst all creators too about these tools, so that it's not a hierarchical or a dictatorship of like, this is what we're going to do with these tools, or someone turning to me and saying, this is what we're going to do with these tools. That there is a deep exchange of knowledge and an understanding of how the tools work. With, not that you have to get into the code, but and with that comes time. And I think giving it, which is what's so interesting about the Folda example, is the time given to this work, because so many of the forms are so new. I think time is a big part of that philosophy, and actually letting it be and figuring it out as you go, and then letting it exist and sort of continue to exist in that way. I think that's pretty key. Yeah. And experimentation, like the philosophy, like it's not a philosophy, but it's just a way, but this idea of experimentation and letting us have that time to be able to figure out what it all means, right? On all the different aspects of what digital dramaturgy is, which is a developing thread of dramaturgy.
Something that I feel like Jacob kind of hinted at in his introduction is that this work, because interactivity is almost necessarily baked in, not just a VR, but almost all kind of digital works, you can feel like you have something that you've made that's really cool, but then once people start interacting with it, it gets broken really quickly, or different things happen in ways that you never expected. And so I feel that's kind of a way that it's like fundamentally different than creating a piece of theater for a physical audience, where you can kind of create the show and it's going to be the show when you present it. You obviously, the energy from the audience changes and you get that feedback, but you can still kind of repeat it every night, whereas that's not necessarily the case once you start involving interactivity. And so there's like a testing of interactivity that's kind of required. Yeah, two-spirit trickster.
Yeah, well, it just kind of makes me think of the essence of art and art practice, and that as soon as you make a work, whatever that is, it's up to the interpretation, and the way it exists is always going to be in the person who perceives it. So it's always going to be out of the hands of the creator as soon as it's being perceived by anyone else. Whereas like within more interactive works, like digital, that's like pushed even further.
Have a philosophy on dramaturgy and what it means in all these kind of weird XR spaces here? One thing that something I didn't mention in my bio is I also teach at a university, and so I teach these things to young people. And one thing that I find that I'm really training them on is how to do feedback. Like that, if we're going to work in this iterative development model, the space between the iterations is as good as the feedback that you get. So like, for example, this year in my class, I just started right away doing an online digital project. Not because I was particularly interested in the project, but I wanted everybody to make something really quickly and get used to giving feedback and start to understand what good feedback is and what's helpful feedback, because that's the thing that iterative development requires is good feedback. Does anyone have any philosophies on like how to evaluate a digital work when it goes out there? Any experience with that sort of thing?
Maybe what you learn from it,
Right.
rather than
Camille
yeah.
here.
Oh, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah, I just wanted to make sure I was looking where the person was talking.
Oh, I know it's hard sometimes. Yeah, I was thinking, especially in relation to students, the intent is one thing, but there's failure and there's success, but what did you learn from it? And I'm thinking that would be a good indicator for students, especially. I mean, for all of us, really, because it's
Yeah, I mean, what I try to tell them is failure is fine in my class, like, and that this
yeah.
kind of fail fast philosophy, which is kind of in the tech entrepreneurial kind of way of doing things right now. Like what I try to encourage them is like to think about their projects not like a pilot project where they would plan it forever and then eventually like reveal their project, but to try to do a minimum viable product prototype right away, test it against reality, and get feedback that way, as opposed to kind of being really precious and building it kind of over a period of time. I found that to be more successful. Brian, you built digital things. What's your philosophy been as you try to test on it? You just had a show this summer that was all digital, I believe. Yeah.
Yeah, it wasn't. I mean, it wasn't like any AR or PXR stuff, but it was all through Zoom. Highly interactive through Zoom. I guess if we're talking about like dramaturgy of feedback, as an artist, I think when Michael, you talk about the minimum viable product, um, iterating stuff, and even Raven, when you're talking about like when we become hyper interactive, um, you can really only make one change at a time. If anyone like is on the sourdough bread hype, you want to make one change to that recipe before understanding. Um, you can't make five because you kind of don't know like what it will do if you think like, oh well, no one's participating or no one's participating in the way we want to. Um, it really, I think, in terms of participatory work, which when translates online is about like how do you get people to engage in a way that you think would be more effective than how they're originally doing it as you're going through alpha, beta,
Right.
blah blah blah.
And so, can I ask you, Brian, like very specifically? So, when you had your show, how did you do a dress rehearsal?
Oh my god. I had a large team, so we would have to rehearse for each other. So what you end up getting is like you don't, as you rehearse, you don't get to do the full show because there are 11 performers, but only like 4 of them we could do without them just having to completely imagine what the audience would be doing. That way, each of them at least have one other person that they can react to. The dress rehearsals were really weird. They were always like so very difficult to do without an audience. Which when we did in person was a lot easier because we could invite people in and do those play tests, but online it was a little bit harder. Just in terms of like time management to get people to come. Yeah. It's tough.
One thing that I've noticed is, sorry, go ahead. Yeah, please.
Or I was going to go in a different. Well, I think part of what strikes me in particular, like I do a lot of theater production as a playwright and a director and a producer, a festival artistic director, and it really strikes me that this medium brings with it a tremendous new uh, aesthetic, dramaturgical opportunity and burden. That I do think that everything, when we have actors on a stage, we've been talking for decades now about the text of an actor's body, right? And that, different actors' bodies bring inherently in them a text. And we, as an audience, are seeing both the character and that the performer's body and the text that accompanies that body. And we make our meaning from the collision of our world and all those worlds. And in this space, I find that there's a whole new aesthetic burden, or I mean, I use that word not necessarily negatively. I think that a burden can also strengthen us. But the idea that everything that we have as creators, a high degree of control over what everyone looks like, about how everyone moves, about what everyone's face and bodies and all of those pieces are shaped like, what they sound like, and break down to the trees and the shapes of these houses, these kind of, beautiful Swiss Alps houses, right? Like all of this stuff heavily embedded in the text. And whoever creates the space has control over those texts to a degree, and presumably over the next couple
Hi,
of years,
sorry to
we're gonna
interrupt
have
everybody.
more and more
About
control.
5 more minutes of chatting, and then we'll come back together.
It's just a really interesting challenge.
Yeah, there's definitely a lot of God mode kind of things going on that are like ethical pitfalls. Has anybody kind of discovered themselves kind of getting moved around that way, like where they felt kind of uncomfortable by being just a peon in a world where you can be shuffled around?
Well, I think because I don't code, a lot of things are already created, and they weren't created by me. So whoever created them had a particular bias or a particular set of, I don't know, values, and it's all encoded into the world. It's encoded into how your avatar looks. It's encoded into the choices that you have. So there's yeah, it's kind of a world that's really almost predetermined. You have choices, but there's a limited choice set of choices.
Yeah, I feel really weird about the fact that I chose what I look like right now, which is not what I look like at all in reality. And then I showed up here and I realized that most people actually look like kind of how they look like. And
You've really changed. Your Queens has really changed you.
Yeah, no, totally. But I appreciated like the opportunity to kind of look different because I probably teaching at Queens this would be a weird look too. But here I thought it was fine. But then Clayton put a bunch of selfies up, and my partner saw them on Facebook, and she's like, "This is very weird. Everyone looks like themselves but you. Like, what are you doing here? Maybe you should build a new one." So that's interesting.
And it sort of goes to a similar thing was raised, Raven, at the talk that you were at yesterday about that, and I know from people who like I have a VR artist friend who builds avatars, and she went looking for she's a black VR designer, and she went looking for black hair and couldn't find it. And so she ended up having to do that labor herself, right? And then she crowdsourced it, and now there's like this wicked library. But it's that changing. Totally, I'll hook you up with it. It's awesome. But it's those pieces, right? It's getting women into tech. It's diversifying the tech so that yes, the code is diverse itself, because it's hard when you are only dealing with drop-down menus. How diverse can you make the trees? It's a big problem.
In our bodies, it's an embodied experience to a certain extent, but then again, there's only particular bodies that are allowed into the space.
Totally.
One thing that I was just going to say that I do remember experiences here better than I remember a Zoom call. And there's something about
That's
how
true.
It's
That's very
Everyone,
true.
I'm just going to say, please try to make your way back to your Shard's main area, where we began
so
the
short.
discussion. So it should be near the completely disgustingly messed up tables.
I'll just finish by saying that I was very shocked because, or just disappointed in myself.
Yeah,
'Cause I
you
went
guys
to
are
Splash
like in business here. Yeah, you win. You
She
win the
still made
discussion
it.
here.
She's
Oh,
still
we
she's
won
still
the discussion.
amplified.
Oh.
No,
Um,
she's not. She's dishing
She
to
wasn't talking
somebody
to us.
else. No.
Oh. I mean, the
You're so
weird thing was I
tall.
went to
I know,
Zuckerberg's kind of
sitting on
talk
this
about
ball.
what Facebook's going
And
to
I'm
do, and that was
turning
his big
around
thing.
so
Was
I
he's
can
like,
sit on it.
people don't remember
Nice. Yeah.
Zoom. That's why I want everyone to have their meetings in VR so they can remember their meetings. And I was like, I don't
Right.
want to be with Mark or anything.
No, but he's right.
Shall we go back?
Yeah.
Yeah.
See, this is where I
Hooray.
wish we could walk and talk.
Totally.
This is like, can I zoom here? Let's see if I match your speed. I can kind of talk with you while we walk. Is that even possible? Sort
Yeah, I
of.
think so.
It's like a little bit nauseating,
remember
and
how
I keep
It
going,
is.
keep like running into you and Brian. Now I'm like, what? Yeah,
Brian,
get
how did you set
really.
yourself to smooth yesterday?
It is under settings.
Oh.
Yeah,
I want to
it's
learn
under
more about that. I'm so
settings.
jerky.
It's way better than the jerky thing. Oh, now I'm in Camille's eyes. Oh my gosh, this is so.
And I've been trying to get a hold of the creators of it because I just randomly befriended them and then found myself in the audience, which is
Oh,
really
great.
nice.
It's nice to see
Yeah.
a real sound person. Like
Awesome.
Looks like we're all getting together here.
the visuals and stuff.
Oh,
Like,
yeah.
are really
I
powerful.
mean,
Everybody's
we're all
turning up.
full of.
Sound point
Yeah.
of view. Just like really
We're back.
not.
Hey everybody, thanks for coming back.
Honestly, oh yeah, okay, yeah, sure, yeah.
What I'd love
We had like a wow moment with his audio.
now is to hear back from the individual groups. I'm not sure how we're going to hear from the other shard if there's someone over there. No. Anyone? Bueller? Okay, we'll move on. So we had Adnan's, Conrad's, and Michael's groups, and if there's someone who wanted to share from the group with Michael Wheeler talking about dramaturgical processes, that would be great.
Oh. Yeah, we forgot to nominate someone. Is anyone from our group? Or, you know, I thought we would nominate someone, but I guess I forgot about the technical challenge of that only I can amplify my voice from this group. So I guess I will report from us. Everyone talking to you?
Sure,
Okay, so
go
we were
for it.
talking about dramaturgy. I think some of the things that we talked about was iterative design being more key to digital and PXR exploration, so that you can test things
Justine, are you
out.
hearing something?
Yeah, I can hear you guys talk.
Okay, great.
Okay, we can't hear
Oh,
anyone
maybe
else
I'm not
talk.
on air though. Also, haha.
Are you
I'm
on air,
and
Michael?
amplified now. Yes. So
Is that working?
everyone should hear me. In
Can
all
you raise
shards.
your hand or emoji if you can hear Michael talking? Okay, great. Thank you. Okay, yeah, you're good now.
Cool. So we talked a bit about kind of iterative design, failing fast, like trying to find ways to get user feedback, and that in this kind of world, like if you can create something, Jacob hinted at this in his opening remarks, but until you've tested it on an audience, that's different. Beth brought up in terms of digital dramaturgy, like a less hierarchical process where people are working together to kind of come up with shared ideas and values to the creative process. And we talked a little bit just about like the choices that you can't make in this world, that like fundamentally, or any world, like when you enter a virtual space, a lot of the choices are made for you in a way that they're not in negotiating that as well, and kind of making sure that the tools are out there to represent kind of anyone in any perspective that they might have. That's me.
Awesome. Conrad, I heard there was a lively discussion in your group,
Oh,
a
yeah.
different flavor.
You know, it's actually a lot of the same topics we covered.
Was it?
Yeah, like, you know, failing fast, iterative, in terms of managing timelines of production. But also, I think one of the most important points that we sort of came to was to, you know, find an early point of relation with regards to, you know, if you're approaching doing a virtual reality production of some other kind of production, like let's say opera, for example. Having Debbie bring forward what the production cycle for a typical opera is from the outset, it helps us more. Like the rest of the team background was quite technical in terms of our understanding of game design and producing game experiences. So having her bring forward this like opera production timeline for us to understand and relate to, it really helped demystify the process for her. And we were able to find a language to navigate the timeline and to make sure that she understood problems that could arise and the constraints, as Wheeler mentioned about working in virtual reality. There are a lot of constraints, right? Well, a lot more than in the real world. It's very interesting how similar our discussions ended up being. Yeah.
Thank you so much. Megan, did you end up having any time to chat with your group?
Yeah, well, I mean, a little. We kind of just like went around the circle. I got really lost, so that's
shards. What are you gonna do?
Shards. I mean, we mostly kind of talked about how a lot of us have been alone, even though we are working in groups. How because of COVID, we went from being like near people to just sort of having to be. There's a lot of basements. A lot of us are in basements. So that was happening. Yeah, and it was like it just kind of echoed a lot of the stuff that I kind of was going through. But yeah, I feel like I wish we kind of had more time because I really wanted to start going into like why are we working alone anyways? Because when you're working in VR, oftentimes you're not literally collaborating together for majority of the development process. You're each sitting at a booth, kind of working on your own thing and sharing what you've done. Whereas like with theater, sometimes you need like a multiple hands just to put something together. So that's something I've always been thinking about lately with VR is just like we've lost a lot of the hands-on, but we're still building like these giant sets and stuff. Like even this space, like this would have been like one person just doing it by themselves. So are we losing
I think
anything that way?
actually that is what happened.
Yeah.
Yeah, Alex is amazing.
Thank you so much. Jacob, did you want to chat about your group?
Sure. I was also got a little lost in the shards and so then chatted a lot or blathered a bit. I talked about play being the similar process, the thing that is similar to me in creative process. One is coming basically from Clown, and these are objects, and so you pick up every object and you do 8,000 things with it. And every object is good for doing 8,000 things, none of which the designers meant. And so I sort of approach that here as well. That this gives me more joy than we're not in the same room, but the fact that I can put my hand inside a light means I want to play with that and figure out things. We talked also about sort of my perception that this stuff is quite hard. The interaction of this is quite hard. I'm certainly aware of the difference between my creative practice up here in the Yukon of 0 cases and not very good internet, and how that is actually more and more growing, the disconnect between myself and Southern folks, in good and bad ways, right? I don't have a pressure of not being able to go outside. We can do shows around fireplaces, and we have not, those things are more viable. But that creative sense of play is the same. I think the opportunity in VR for me to play off-site is really one of the exciting things. So can I use this? I can't play with it's harder to play with giant puppets in an abandoned strip mine in real space, but maybe I can build that space in VR and do the playing in VR, and then once we're doing the show in the mine site, we know how big the giant puppet needs to be to read at a distance, because we've done sort of perspectival stuff in VR. And that's really exciting to me as a maker who wants to work in places that are hard to get to.
Great. That makes so much sense. And also, like, I'm just wild with jealousy. Like, what are friends in person together?
And what's very weird is like we get to like we do have because of the mining world, we have a huge amount of photogrammetry and data scans
That's
of the
so
entire
fascinating.
territory. Right, we have a
Wow.
huge amount of data of the land. Many of it controlled by Canadian companies who have huge human rights violations, both here and in South America, so that complicates it. I speak to you from the Gold Core Educational Room. Yeah. So that's all the entanglement that is the North, and huge amounts of government funding, and we're just here to prove that we own it, but also with really bad internet.
You're doing great now. Anna, I heard you had a far-reaching discussion over in your corner.
Yeah. It was a discussion. I mean, primarily like the technical demands are so new to all the technical as well as aesthetic considerations that we are. I integrated into this through augmented reality, and everything that I've been creating is from the place of someone who would have little technology, massive little exposure to this, not be cognizant already. And so a lot of my creation work has been for both audience and other performers that I'm collaborating with, all collaborators, to be able to know how to see how to create and how to apply basic theatrical principles within these worlds. So I'm quite interested and fascinated by how much more I can do with this. I started from the place that I know after what I don't know, and was able to like make significant advances without feeling like I'm held back. And, I think that's primarily what we spoke about. Yeah.
You're a tiny bit garbled for me. I'm not sure for other people, but I think I got the gist of what you were saying a little bit. There are there other questions? Yeah, I'm gonna come over here. Oh, hop. Okay. Did you have a question over here? No? Okay. Sorry. That was kind of aggressive. Whoa. Anyone have a question for the panel? Any hands up? No? Okay. So my question, my final question for the group here. Oh, did I see one? Yeah. Oh yeah. Hi. Go for it. I'm amplifying you.
Shall I wait or can I? Talk?
No, yeah, go for it. Talk.
Okay. Yeah, I wanted to ask about creators, how you negotiate intention for a piece, and as well as with technical stuff in mind.
Are they talking?
How do you create with that intention, and then also a knowledge of what kind of audience there is, and how different the audience is in a technical space.
Are they amplified?
I'm trying to amplify them next to me. Is that working?
Nope.
It might not go to the shard.
Yeah.
Oh, it might not go to the start. Okay. I'm sorry. Sorry about that.
Maybe just to repeat the question.
Should we repeat
Yeah.
the question for
again?
Okay. Yeah. If you can tell me the question, I'll try to repeat it as best I can.
Okay. So, how as creators do you start with a project and its intentions, and how is it affected by the interactivity of technology and audience?
Okay, so how as creators do you start with an intention, and how is it impacted by the technology and audience? Did I say that right? Is there more?
Yeah.
Okay.
That's about
great.
it.
That was the question. Okay, great.
So what was that?
How do you start with an intention and then like for a piece, and then how is that impacted by both the technology that you're using and the audience for it?
Feels like an essay.
You have 2 minutes. Yeah, Michael, go for it. If you have an answer, go for it.
I do think that kind of that question speaks to a way that like all the performing arts are shifting, not just like XR performing arts. Whereas like we're shifting out of like what I would call like an auteur model of arts production, where you have like a
Oh,
kind of
yeah.
a genius at the top of a pyramid whose vision then kind of spreads through all the different departments that are below that kind of auteur at the top of the pyramid, and that all of this work is becoming much more collaborative, much more consensus based, and so like what your vision is less important than like what the collective's vision is, and that also the interactivity and then empowers each participant to have a different experience, which might not be anything that any of the artists have envisioned, and so it's like a really big letting go of intention.
I love that. Yeah, Megan, did you want to say something?
Oh, yeah. I don't know how to undo that.
You
I
just
guess
click it again.
also. Oh, there it goes.
There you go.
Yeah, I guess also to that, one of the big things that like when I was doing game design, and UX and UI design was that the big thing about like ideas are, okay, this is going to sound harsh, but like ideas are worthless, but it's the execution of that idea that gives it the idea its value. And so I have working in so many different fields like education and edutainment and that kind of thing is like you get a lot of people who are like the big idea, I have these huge ideas, but then there's no plan for execution, or there's a refusal to sort of like give over that plan, that idea to the group in order to actually
Yeah.
like execute it in any kind of way. And so I am seeing that kind of shift away, but also like in the indigenous spaces, there's a lot of like that's being given just like the filmmakers, and they're having a hard time of like transitioning their skill set. And I think that has mostly to do with like the vision of the screen. So like a VR, like the screen is all around you essentially, even though it's technically just in front of you, where like with a film, it's in a fixed location and you're always like got to look at that point. So I think also there's a bit of a shift in that people are coming with preconceived visions of how the screen should function moving into VR and having a hard time translating that idea into the 360. Does that make sense?
Perfect. And
Yeah.
yeah. Anna, did you want to add to that?
Yeah, I also, the way I interpreted the question that you asked is, you start with an intentionality of the project that you want to, and then figure out how to achieve using technology. And for me, rather than being hindered by my lack of experience or knowledge in the technology, I'm starting with the thing that I know. So my intentionality is necessarily bound to my knowledge of what the technology is. I will achieve the thing that I want. So the more that I learn about how it functions, the more I can expand my idea. It's kind of like, oh,
Yeah, I'm sorry. Yeah, no, you're just super garbled. I'm so sorry. Sometimes it actually takes like leaving and coming back, but we are actually at time, and I hate to end on that note, but I also want to, so I want to end a note on a complete gratitude for our panelists and for the group here for being so open and having such a great and far-reaching conversation. And hopefully this will lay some groundwork for a more collaborative, dare I say, feminist approach to creation in XR. Thank you.
And thank you very much, Justine. Can we give her some clicks for conducting this brave experiment? She was the chief person in the lab for sure. Thank you so much, Justine.
Thank you. Thanks,
Yay.
everybody.
Everyone, take 10 minutes, and then the final future note is where you came in. It's a giant glowing portal where the basketball net used to be in Central. So in about 10 minutes, take a break, get some water, and then we're going to get started for our final event. Thank you very much.
Thanks, guys.
we're going to get started. Thanks so much for joining us for our final presentation, what we were calling our future note. Not an end note, but a future note. And I wanted to just start off by saying that PXR 2020 has been brought to you by Single Thread Theater Company and Electric Company Theater. We want to thank our community partners, Toaster Lab and the Center for Entertainment Arts, and especially the funding support of the Canada Council for the Arts Digital Strategy Fund. We'd like to acknowledge that we've organized this event primarily on the traditional, ancestral, and unceded territory of the Coast Salish peoples, the Squamish, the Tsleil-Waututh, and the Musqueam nations. And now it is my great joy, honor, pleasure to introduce to you someone that I have met entirely through VR. And I think for me, like when I think of like what's been the benefit of all this, well, it was getting to meet this awesome person, Casey Koizen. Casey is an installation and sound artist, and he's going to speak to us about his process of learning to sculpt in VR and how he has integrated digital tools into his practice. So Casey, take it away, my friend, and let's give him a round of applause.
Awesome. Thank you, Masicho. Yeah, this is great to be able to do a talk somewhat in person. This is my first virtual reality artist talk, and I'd be lying if I said the nervousness still wasn't coming through, but it kind of is. So yeah, it's a great opportunity, and it's been great getting to know Alex and Aiden and Clayton and the other organizers of this event, because I feel it's a very forward-moving sort of way to still be developed in the arts and theater world. So my name is Casey Koizen. I'm a Tlicho Dene interdisciplinary artist from Yellowknife, Northwest Territories. I'm currently living in Winnipeg, Manitoba, where I'm navigating my way through a Master of Fine Arts degree at the University of Manitoba, which is weird, you know, just as is everything these days. But I'm going to take you through some of my earlier work, kind of like a brief history of all of my artwork leading up until now, and kind of the segue into VR from my installation work. So this is a piece called, it's an audio map basically of the Kamloops area where I did my Bachelor of Fine Arts at Thompson Rivers University. And what is happening here, it's an amalgamation of found objects and earth materials that have microphones and speakers built into the installation itself. Behind the big sort of piece there in the left of center, behind that is a bunch of effect pedals like a distortion, delay, and a preamp that sends the input from the mics to the speakers so that people have a sort of interaction with the installation sculpture itself. You'll see in the bottom left-hand corner there, it's plugged into the wall, which kind of powers everything. This was the first time that I created a installation with earth materials indoors. So it was the first time that I realized that scent and smell was starting to become a part of my artwork, because you can actually smell the materials when you're in the space. This is my pride and joy and the dragon that I've been chasing ever since I created it. It's called the Mode of Ascension, and it was my fourth year Bachelor of Fine Arts work. This is a log that is about 8 feet high by 2.5 feet in circumference diameter, and it's hollowed out 3/4 of the way through. And how I acquired this log was that there was a pine beetle infestation which happened within the southern interior of BC, and half of the trees on campus were cut down. Alex, are you megaphoned right now? I'm getting feedback. that fixed it. Awesome. So yeah, pine beetle infestation rolled through and half the trees on campus were cut down, and this piece was just brought to the sculpture studio. And I assumed it was someone. I asked around, it was no one, so took the liberty of taking it and creating something of it. So began the process of hollowing it out. It took quite a long time, and I almost broke my wrists in the process because of the reciprocator saw and drill and crowbar that I was using to do it. And I was acquiring earth materials from all over Kamloops in order to create this like upside down nest kind of feel. And the audio which is present within this installation is meant to reflect the harmony and the chaos of the universe. We have a, can I play it from there? Nice. Oh, no. That's way back. Let's go previous. Okay. Not sure how loud the audio is on this, but it gives you an idea as to more of the feeling of it. All of the installations that I do have walkthrough videos. So the main inspiration for this installation is straight out of the movie Alien, where Ripley and the child come across the room that's housing the xenomorph queen, and it's kind of asserting its dominance, taking over the space, and making it its own. So that's always been a very inspirational movie to me, and I wanted to make something like that. So that is basically where the root of the inspiration came from for this installation in particular. The dimensions are 50 feet long by 25 feet wide, and I created a 15-foot makeshift ceiling out of aircraft cable and earth materials there. So the work that I'm working on right now within my MFA is basically in the second iteration of this project, where instead of one big log, I'm going to have at least 5 that are that will kind of pick up people's proximity to the logs, and they'll resonate their own sort of soundtrack and visuals. And that's currently a work in progress that will hopefully be completed by May of 2021, which is hopefully when we'll have our grad, but due to COVID, some things have been kind of pushed already and stretched back. So we'll see what happens, but we're kind of just going with the flow there. So that's a little tidbit of that. Okay, in 2017, I was asked to take part in the Insurgents Resurgence exhibition at the Winnipeg Art Gallery, which at the time was the biggest exhibit hosting Indigenous artists in Canada. It took up about 10,000 square feet of the gallery, pretty much all of the third floor and parts of the first and second floor as well. And for this installation, I harvested a bunch of driftwood from the Red River and the Assiniboine rivers that flow through Winnipeg. And this installation was, it's called Gone But Not Forgotten. And it is meant to pay tribute and to celebrate the lives of people that have been found within those rivers, and to address the ongoing MMIWG crisis within Canada. And it was an honor to take part in this massive exhibit alongside people that I've idolized since my first and second year of my BFA, and it was just an amazing experience, and I couldn't be happier with the result and that sort of thing. When the exhibition was coming down, there was a tour that was given to elders and chiefs from throughout the Manitoba area, and one of the chiefs requested that when the installation be taken down, that the wood could be used to burn in ceremony. And they asked me if that was okay, and I thought, like, that's the perfect way for these materials to return to the earth. So that was definitely an honor to have, and for the materials to go back to the earth, because when I don't fabricate the materials with any sort of paint or any sort of chemicals, then they return to the earth in some way. And I think this would be a good time to go to the next video. Play. And next. Okay, this is a piece called Residential Values, and I created this in 2016, I believe. And I call it a performance painting, and it's me taking about 300 to 400 shots of painted pucks onto a canvas that cycle between black, white, and red, black, white, and red. And it's my favorite color scheme, but it's also a very violent color scheme. But in addition to that, it's a color scheme that's present in many indigenous cultures, not only in Canada, but throughout the world. And this piece is to address, at the heart of it, racism in sport, but also my father's experience within residential school and playing hockey there, as well as my experience as an aspiring hockey player in southern Alberta, where I faced a lot of racism. It was like the first time that I'd ever experienced it, having moved from Whitehorse down to Lethbridge. So it's to address the effects of residential school, the intergenerational effects of residential school within Canada, and also that correlation between racism in sport and fight for equal rights for everyone. So all of these videos that I'm playing are hosted on my YouTube channel. If you'd like to take the time to go through them at your leisure, you're more than welcome to. Okay, just going to hint on a little bit of graphic design. Graphic design is something that kind of started my digital journey and arts journey. So I've done work for numerous clients. This is one of the ones I'm most proud of, which is an advertisement that I did, a segment of an advertisement that I did for the city of Yellowknife, where I created this vectorized TP in Adobe Illustrator and incorporated the text in the full version and that sort of thing. I had the honor of working on a video game. It was the first video game that I helped out with, called Thunderbird Strike. The lead creator was Elizabeth Pensier, and she asked me to do the music and the sound effects and also the narration for the video game. And ever since I was a kid, I've always wanted to do like voices for cartoons and stuff like that. So it was an opportunity for me to do some voice acting. So I went with this kind of like wrestler kind of indigenous kind of angle on things and came up with the voice for Thunderbird Strike. So I was to create a bunch of different assets for that, and it was a lot of fun to work on, and it was about 2 years of development, very limited budget. But it was more so the concept of the thing, because the video game is about a legendary Thunderbird who is basically destroying the oil and gas industry with their lightning eyes and ripping out pipeline from the ground with their claws and that sort of thing. So as soon as she pitched the idea to me, it's like, I'm totally in. I don't care what I get paid, blah, blah, blah. And it was submitted to the Imaginative Film and Media Arts Festival in 2017, and it won Best Digital Media of that year, which was an amazing opportunity. However, 2 weeks later, there was a article that was released by Fox News, basically labeling us as eco-terrorists, and that was a whole thing, which was, I don't know. It was very interesting. There was a lot of paranoia coming from me as well. It's like, am I going to be blacklisted from flights? Like, can I not fly anywhere? Blah, blah, blah. And I really sympathize with Elizabeth, because being the lead, she naturally took a lot of the primary heat from all of that, from big oil and all that sort of thing. But regardless, I am very proud of my work on this game, and I'd really like to have the opportunity to do it again. Okay, so before I get into some of the VR stuff, I'll play the rest of these videos. Let's see what we have next. Oops. Do this. Da-da. Okay, so I'm also a audio artist and musician. One of my aliases for more of my harder kind of sounding electronic work is Naga, and with this music video, which I created myself, I collaborated with Tanya Snow, who is a Inuit throat singer from Yellowknife. This work was shown at the 2018 Imaginative Festival, I believe. It was a lot of fun to work on not only this song but the video as well. And Tanya allowed me to experiment with her voice and her throat singing a little bit. So there's some instances within the song and composition where I'm doing a bunch of octaves and kind of crazy cuts and that sort of thing. And utilizing some stock footage of nature and animals and that sort of thing to bring the whole concept together. I haven't really played much music or live music from February 2019 to February 2020, just so that I could focus on my artwork. So this was the last music video that I made, but in the future when I release my full LP, there'll be more videos and compositions that kind of come out of that. I have a free EP as Naga to download off of Bandcamp, and that's available within or accessible within my website. There's a link for that at the end there. So what everyone is here for, I assume, is to hear about some of the VR stuff. So I will be completely honest, the main reason why I got into VR was because of the video game Superhot. Raise your hand if you've ever played Superhot before. Couple people. Awesome. Right on. Okay, so yeah, that was the whole reason why I got into VR in the first place. And so I played about 100 to 200 hours of Superhot, and the person or the organization, Western Arctic Moving Pictures, who lent me the VR headset and the gaming laptop at the time, they wanted to push me to do more. So they influenced me to start working with Tilt Brush, and I was kind of surprised as to how quickly I picked it up, because within my journey as an artist, before going to do my BFA at Thompson Rivers University, I really wanted to be able to draw and paint really well, but I'm not good at it. Like it was something that I really pushed for, but I had to accept that it wasn't my strong point. However, when I started to paint and draw in Tilt Brush, something just clicked, and I knew that it was all about that Z axis, to be able to look around the strokes and the brushes that you're making and to really render something that you can get a better idea for shape and form and that sort of thing. So this idea came from a actual installation idea that I wanted to do, where I would put a whole bunch of spruce boughs that cover an entire city intersection in Yellowknife. And I was thinking about this, it was going to be a guerrilla installation, that sort of thing, but the more I thought about it, I realized that it could possibly be an installation that could like I could get charged for it. Like, you know, I started thinking, like, if someone was driving across this and it messes with their vehicle, I could maybe be charged with tampering with a motor vehicle or something like that. So I just decided to do it in VR, and took it one step further and created a teepee within an intersection, kind of like this reclamation sort of idea and project as well. And this is a piece that I created called Raven Gods. And when I started in VR, I automatically started to be inspired by and create artworks that were about the legends of not only indigeneity as a whole, but the legends of the Northwest Territories. And to us, ravens in Yellowknife and the Northwest Territories are very sacred animals. So I was going for this like council of shadowy figures kind of thing, inspired by Clone High. I don't know if any of you have seen that cartoon, but that was one of the inspirations that came from this. And they're kind of just like watching over us and kind of just making sure that we respect the land and each other and that sort of thing. And it was one of the first pieces that I did where I really pushed that scale element of virtual reality, because in Yellowknife, there's not a lot of spaces that you could rent to actually do physical large-scale work. So one of the things that was really attractive to me about VR is that you can create something gigantic within a 6-foot space in your home. So as a large-scale artist, I really enjoyed that sort of process. So this was kind of the idea I had to really push that for myself. And in continuing with the aesthetic of making northern animals and whatnot, this piece actually came from a dream that I had while I was spending the night at my mom's cabin, which is about 30 to 40 minutes outside of Yellowknife. I had this dream that a pack of 5 wolves appeared around my mom's cabin. Like I woke up, I was still in my dream, but I woke up and I heard this howling. So I went out to her barbecue pit, basically a fire pit on the edge of her land where you could see all the way across the lake. And across the lake, there were these 5 wolves kind of standing there, and the one in the middle, their back was on fire. And from this vast distance, I could feel that heat somehow, and I could see their eyes. And when I had that kind of connection with them, they all kind of ran over to kind of like the north side of the lake. And then when I woke up, my mom asked me if I'd heard any wolves. And I was like, well, I had a dream about some wolves. And she said that there was a pack of wolves that appeared around the cabin last night. And the cabin across the road from my mom's cabin, they just had a litter of puppies a couple days previously. So unfortunately, the wolves killed the mother, the father, and 2 of the puppies, and there was 2 puppies remaining, and my mom adopted one of the puppies as her own. So it was a very serendipitous kind of surreal experience to have that, but I also felt obligated to kind of create something that would be there as like a memory for I guess that instance. And one of the legends of the Northwest Territories is the giant beavers that used to roam the north and occupy the lakes. And legend has it that these giant beavers would kill people who were trying to cross the lakes in their birch bark canoes. So I wanted to make something that was an intro to kind of that idea. I know this beaver looks really happy and that sort of thing, but in the future that'll change because we want to implement it into this VR experience that we're creating called Wanaze Keoke Sea Visions, which is like a virtual reality 360 experience of all of the legends of the Northwest Territories. We have more so in the southern sort of areas of the NWT, we have a lot of bison who occupy a lot of the woods, but also the roads. And sometimes they just won't move. Like if you're driving, there's 6 or 7 bison on the road and they're just like, no, you go when we say you go, you know? So I want to kind of create something like that as well. And oh, I'm getting a bit of feedback again. Check. Okay, I'll just go on. Okay, so this is implemented into our. Actually, that might be Alex. Could you? Oh, there we go. Never mind. So this is implemented into our experience as well as we call it the gatekeeper, this bison, and it's kind of an introduction to the experience itself. Maybe so I play these. Next. Okay, yeah, right on. So this work is called Migration 2491, and these are a bunch of caribou. And what this work is all about is kind of a look into the future, because as is right now, that occupy the Northwest Territories. And the concept behind this is that in the year 2491, which is 1,000 years after the North America was colonized, that in the future up in the Northwest Territories that there's going to be so many diamond mines within the land and structures up there that caribou won't be able to migrate properly to their breeding grounds because they're already having a really hard time. Their migration patterns are getting disrupted and it's always fluctuating every year. So my thought is that in the year 2491, one way that the caribou can migrate is by way of a giant portal, so that they can migrate safely, they can go to their breeding grounds and feeding grounds and come back and everyone's happy, and it's sort of an instance to like save the caribou. Next. Oh, I'll save that one for later. Actually, no, I'll save that one right now because I'm almost done. Okay, so this was my first VR commission that I created, and it's called With the Ancestors. This was created for the Urban Society of Aboriginal Youth. That's their logo there on the back of the shawl and the regalia. And it's two fancy dancers, an adult and a youth, and this really communicates like the empowerment of women and girls, but also the transference of knowledge and technique by way of dancing. So I wanted to make it a beautiful piece and something that really honored the people in Alberta. The regalia is inspired by Blackfoot designs, and with the concept of you're dancing with the ancestors. So an ancestor is up in the sky, kind of watching over them and watching over the powwow. The arbor is inspired by the Kamloops powwow grounds in Kamloops, BC. Yeah, so that is a kind of general idea as to where I've been, where I'm coming from, and where I'm currently at, and where I plan to go in the future. A lot of these VR creations are kind of like sketches that will hopefully develop into something bigger, other collaborative ideas, and that sort of thing. If you want to follow me on any sort of social media, these are all my links. I honestly am not on Twitter like at all. I find it, this is just me, but I find it to be a very toxic kind of platform. So I generally just kind of stay away from it, but I'm mostly avidly on Instagram and Facebook, and those are my websites. I show a lot of works in progress because I really enjoy seeing other people's works in progress, and how a project kind of comes from conceptualization to fruition. So I really like to put that out there as well. So yeah, thank you, Masicho. I appreciate everyone coming out and all the hearts and claps and that sort of thing. I gotta take a picture of that. It was great.
Yeah.
Cool.
That's amazing. Thank you, Casey. That was awesome. Do you want to take a question or two, or?
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Any questions for Casey? Let's see if I can monitor. Oh, I'm going to allow hand raises. It's tricky because the white, the snow makes it so that it's hard to see this. But if you kind of like tilt your gaze up to the sky a bit, you'll be able to see. You can raise your hand in the bottom right hand corner. Oh, okay. We have a question. We have a question from Raven. Raven, I'm going to put you on air. Okay, Raven, go ahead.
Hey, I wanted to hear about how you decided where the 4 sacred directions would be in the space.
In this space here in Masha World?
Yeah, I saw your tobacco ties and wanted to ask you about your process of deciding within a digital virtual space what the 4 directions would be.
Yeah, so that was kind of one of the original ideas for this world and this project, and how to kind of tie it all together, was to create these tobacco ties. I utilized Blender to make them with physics and collision and that sort of thing, and allocating the medicine wheel concept of that. So the red, white, black, and yellow, and then distributing them in the world itself. So I basically made the models and handed it over to Alex with the kind of general kind of concept. I don't know exactly how specific they are in terms of like where north, south, west, and east is, because I honestly don't know within this world. And I'm not sure if it really matters too much, but that's sort of how that idea came about.
Awesome. Any other questions? That was a good one. Okay. All right.
Is there another one?
I think that's everyone. Okay. All right. So people have found the fireworks. I do want to maybe let's give her another round of applause for Casey, and then I think I will. I just have a few things I'd like to say, just to thank a few people. But round of applause for Casey. Casey, thanks so much for taking the time to do this, and it was so great to hear about your journey with this all these cool new tools.
Absolutely, my pleasure.
So, yes, and feel free to shoot off some fireworks as I do this. Yeah, grab a firework, fire them off. This is the end of PXR 2020. I want to thank our core team, Ian and Justine Garrett from Toaster Lab, Jesse and Clayton from Electric Company, Amanda Baker, Kristen, Chloe, David, Liam, and Aiden on the single thread side. This has been a really long journey. We've been working at this for some of us more than 6 months, so it's been a long haul. I want to thank our partners, starting with Electric Company, who this came out of an introduction from Jiv Parasram at Rumble, who recommended that Clayton and I meet up. And Clayton just was willing to meet with me, which I think is so important that, I don't know, people who are more established and leaders take that time to do that. And Clayton has really believed in this project from day one and trusted Single Thread with a lot. And we've worked really hard to try to live up to the trust that Electric has put into us. I want to thank Toaster Lab for their help with outreach, with streaming, with planning. I want to thank Cohort for contributing their staff, their time to helping us with workshops. I want to thank Outside the March, Vancouver VR, CEA, and the Culch for their support and engagement. I want to thank our steering committee, who have helped guide this event and have been fantastic at advising our decision-making. Clayton, Ian, Melissa, Liam, Beth, Milton, Griffin, and Evo, thank you guys for guiding us on this journey. I want to single out Beth Cates, who has been an absolutely incredible collaborator on this project and has offered me so much great advice. And I know that many of you are here through your connection to Beth, and that really speaks to the work that she has done to build up this XR community. Thank you to our volunteers in purple for your help getting us oriented in the space. We appreciate all the time that you've given to us. And finally, this entire thing would not have been possible without the Canada Council Digital Strategy Fund. So thank you, Canada Council, for supporting our knowledge growth and exploration of the XR medium, and also your willingness to support our pivot to virtual reality. When I phoned you up and I was like, can we do this? And you were like, yeah, absolutely. And I hope you're happy with the outcome. So we're going to send out a feedback survey to all of you, in which we hope you'll take the time to fill that out as we figure out how to do this better next time around. We would like to do this again next year, and we are actively planning PXR 2021. And if you are interested in collaborating with us next year, please let us know. Please come and find myself, Liam, or Clayton, and let's talk about how we can do this again next year. All right, I have nothing else to say. Let's fire off some fireworks and have a good time. Thank you all so much for taking the time to do this. It's been amazing.